All right. Okay, we've been talking about vernacular for since yesterday. So many times, a lot of things have been said. So obviously, everyone knows what is vernacular in connection with building. Like Professor Prakash yesterday mentioned, there are several definitions. The word vernacular means something that's local roots. It can be language, it can be clothes, it can be house, anything. And vernacular buildings are people-engineered buildings built without architects and engineers using the traditional building technology. All right? And vernacular architecture, architectural style which meets local needs, uses local construction materials, and reflects local traditions. Okay, because this vernacular architecture terminology is also very common. And this is something which has evolved over a millennia. Several generations, things have slowly evolved, and to the extent that it is sort of gotten optimized for the given situation at a particular time. All right, some peculiarities about vernacular system: building made from most easily available materials, ideally from the immediate surroundings. And construction details are dictated by the local materials. No, because for reinforced concrete, you learn all kinds of details. So every system has details which are based on the materials which are being used. And the building form is dictated by the local weather pattern. What kind of rain, snow, hail, heat, whatever, and other local factors. So what examples of vernacular buildings come to your mind? All right. So now, I mentioned about contextuality yesterday during the introduction. So here's an example of contextuality. This is in Dehradun, okay, Uttarakhand, the capital of Dehradun. And just north of Dehradun city, there is this village. All right. Anyway, there is this Tons River, and there is a village called Bishgaon, and there is a village called Chandrauti.
Your pointer is in work.
But here's the Tons River, and on one side is Bishgaon, the other side is Chandrauti. And all the houses historically in Bishgaon have been made of stone. All right. And you just go across the river in Chandrauti, barely a little more than half a kilometer across. And all the houses historically were made of mud. This is contextuality. Because I think there the stone must have been so easily available. It was right there. And stone, of course, is longer lasting than mud. So they use that. But for people in Chandrauti to bring the stone, it must have been so difficult. All right. And the mud in that area was very good. So like this particular house you are looking at is more than 100 years old. All right. So let's move. So, all right. Now, let's just some examples of what people have been doing in different parts very quickly. Bunga of Kutch is very, very well known, made of mud. But also you have Spiti, higher up in Himachal Pradesh, also in Kashmir, the Ladakh region, which is a high altitude desert, where you have earthen construction made of mud. And in Kashmir Valley, you have bricks. Bricks are easily available. So you find multi-story houses made of bricks. But in Kashmir itself, you go up in the mountains and you are far away from bricks. It's made of stone. And the timber is easily available. There's also a lot of wood. Some more examples. In Uttarakhand, you often have slate roof or stone roof and stone walls. Go to Arunachal in northeast, and some absolutely fantastic houses made of bamboo and wood. And go to Bastar, and you find a lot of mud houses with clay tiles, locally made. And you go in Marathwada, which is on Deccan Plateau, where basalt is like, you go 3 or 4 feet down and there is basalt. So basalt is most easily available, and you find houses with basalt stone walls and mud roof. All right. And so this is, in non-urban area, majority of buildings even today are made of these materials, although it is changing. And also even the lifeline buildings are made of this kind of material. They still exist. Now, what is lifeline building? Are you familiar with that? Like buildings like panchayat ghar, police station, schools, hospitals. These are very important buildings. And in case of disaster, these buildings should survive and they should continue to function. All right. Some interesting attributes that we need to take note of. Of course, as I mentioned, they use the most accessible materials, skills available locally, and they're simple to build. There's a big difference between concrete, steel. They're very complicated. These are very easy to build, brings much needed local livelihood, technically easy to maintain. This is again a very important part. We Indians as a country, we are very, very poor in maintenance. So this is a very important factor. Interior remains warm in winter and cool in summer. Very, very common in most of these houses. So they're green, you can call it. Simple logistics. When things are available locally, you don't have to transport them over long distance, and which means you don't burn the fuel. So that is the green aspect. Zero and practically zero embodied energy. All right. So because most of the things are done manually, right? And as a result, most of this is sustainable. So let's look at some interesting examples from different areas, a little bit more detail. Uttarakhand and Himachal, stone houses. All right. So like I mentioned earlier, in Uttarakhand you find roof made of stone. It's called patal. And you must have also heard of slate in Himachal. Slate is thin. All right. So basically, the walling and roofing is done by stone, and buildings also have some timber. And they are really good in rain, snow, and hail. And all these three elements, the houses are well made, well designed, and they have steep roof. And also the pitch roof provide extra storage, which is very commonly used by people. But you come to Latur area, Marathwada, where I mentioned earlier, the stone houses, and they have flat mud roof. Okay, so because there's very little rain, and you don't need a pitch roof, and most of the areas have impervious soil, which are highly clay, and they provide excellent waterproofing. All right, so there is no special waterproofing required now, which most of the new buildings we require that, and as a result, you don't need any specialist. All right, so that's a big plus. And typically, the roofs are maintained every year before monsoon, because in monsoon the water comes and the weeds will start growing, and during the year they will be there. Once in a while they will remove them, but before monsoon they always work on the roof. All right. Also, very interestingly, in Latur region, historically all the trees were such that the straight pieces of timber was never longer than 11 feet. All right. So as a result, the room span, was 8 feet. This was a standard area. That whole region has 8-foot wide rooms. Okay, and then they can be pretty long. So that's the context, contextual factor. All right. And the most beautiful thing is, the thick walls and thick roof, the temperature inside remains constant throughout the year. So you don't need air conditioning or cooler. Most of the time you don't even need fan. The rich households will probably have a couple of fans. All right. So, all right, going up in Himachal, in Spiti region, all right, which is the high altitude desert. Arid climate, high altitude dictates the form and the construction materials. The mud is found everywhere. So the roof and the walls are made of earth. And typically the mud walls are made either of mud blocks, handmade mud blocks, or rammed earth. We will talk about this later in earth construction. But that again is dictated by the given situation, where they would use blocks or rammed earth. And the mud roofs are flat on timber deck. And also very interesting, they have this dry vegetation stacked on top of the wall, so that the water doesn't seep through that. Typically, this area doesn't get rain, although now with climate change, things are changing. But it gets a lot of snow. So the snow will stand in a mountain, it will pile up on these walls, and because of this vegetation, it will not seep down. All right. Okay, coming to the coastal area of Konkan, Goa, and even all the way down to Mangalore, laterite is the most common material that's found for walling. All right. So, you have these kind of houses. They are very long lasting, and laterite is very easy to extract from the ground. All right. I mean, you just cut it without any major effort, and once it's taken out, it hardens and becomes like rock. All right. So, because of heavy rain, generally there are four-sided roofs, and with that, the walls are low. All right. And by and large, they don't have gable walls. Once in a while, you do find exceptions. So these perform very well in the rainy weather. And we go down to Kerala, and there again, laterite is found. Also, a lot of timber and earth. So depending on what one can afford, there's variety of medium of construction is done. But most of the houses, essentially, the form is based on the heavy rainfall, and of course, abundance of timber. So four-way pitch roof is very common, and typical, you have very, very large overhangs, so your walls get protected, especially the earth walls. And the walls are low because of four-sided roof, in absence of girdle, and they perform very well. So see, most of these traditional systems, they perform exceedingly well in the given context. All right. So, but right here, just going around the campus, and we see the impact of rain on every building, and large amount of plastic that you have to put for protection. So now we talked about lifeline building a while ago. So I mentioned that the lifeline buildings also exist made of this. There is Kashmir in the mountains, where again the stone is easily available. You have stone walls and tin roof, big school. This is in Kalimpong, Sikkim, again stone, wood and tin roof. Come to Meghalaya, and you have a different system here, which is made of timber, and there are reeds inside. We'll talk about that later. But this is very common in the northeast. And again, on top of that, you have tin roof. And coming to Kutch with Vernacular ring, you have a school made of bricks with clay tile roof on top of it. So, all right. So vernacular buildings are an important part of the culture, just as much as language, food, and dress. I mean, that is part of the local identity. Okay. And so now also, my question is, don't the other countries have vernacular? Have people heard of anywhere from outside, any well-known things about the vernacular buildings?
So in Wadi Hadram, even we have 10 story buildings modern.
In
Yemen.
Yemen. Right. The British Tudor timberless masonry. This is one of the most well-known and very stylish, and of course there are a lot of imitations of it in many, many places. Okay. So, and you have stone wall and stone roof in Switzerland. Even today it's there. All these things exist today. Even people are making these kind of things today. And it's very interestingly, this particular photograph on the left side, we were doing some work in Uttarakhand where there are stone roofs. And I showed them several photographs from Switzerland, and they were asking me which part of Uttarakhand they're from. All right? But in Uttarakhand, where they want to get rid of. All right? I mean, if they would rather have concrete houses. Bavarian chalet, again, I mean, these are the things that attract tourists. People flock there to see these buildings. And in USA, a few buildings here, East Coast Masonry building. This actually belongs to my nephew, 120 years old. Okay, and this is a common thing, and that his whole area houses are more than 60, 70 years old. This is in Arizona, in the desert, made of mud. Very, very different looking. You can see a stone house somewhere where the stones is available. Of course, today the stone requires a lot of labor, a lot of manpower. It's very expensive. All right. And in California, Mexico, because this part of Mexico once upon a time So you see Mexican influence in the architecture with small overhang because it's dry area. All right. Also, something very, very noteworthy. This is the state of New Mexico. This again was part of Mexico once upon a time in southwest US. It's called Pueblo architecture. All right. And this particular building is the oldest living settlement in at least in that continent from 1250. All right. It has been continuously occupied. I'm sure there is upkeep and all that. And this has become so popular in that area. A 4-star hotel is built with similar architecture, although this is made of steel and concrete. But looks like that. And you have these $1 million mud homes adopting the same architecture and the same techniques, genuinely made of mud. And some of them may not be of mud, but they look like mud. All right? So, some important facts we need to look at. As part of rich cultural heritage provided, and we already covered that, the identity is alive in developed countries of Europe and Latin America. All right, and people take pride in it. I mean, that is the big difference between here and there. All right, and they produce long-lasting buildings that often last for a century or longer. Let's talk about new buildings, how long they last. Use mainly the local materials and skills, easy to build, do not require outside experts, a plus point. And they're more forgiving. Few mistakes here and there, they don't matter much. Even in case of a disaster, these mistakes don't matter so much if they're small. But, all right, yeah, that will be our... The most accessible to local population. Another very, very important factor. Accessibility to housing, okay? Because I mean, today, like roti kapda makan. So if people have access to it, that is very important because that ensures self-sufficiency in housing. Few more facts. A local economy component, it can be as high as 70%. That means if you invest a lakh of rupees in a house, as much as 70,000 can go in the local economy. Okay, it'll produce jobs. All right, and it strengthens the economy because there's always the multiplier effect. Okay, and the jobs are created in one, material extraction and carting, material production, construction, and periodic maintenance. Okay, and these account for over 75% of houses and infrastructure buildings in small towns and rural areas. Okay, few more important facts. They're very small embodied energy and hence emit very little or no carbon in the air. Allows substantial reuse through easy dismantling. This is again a very important fact. Most of these vernacular buildings you can dismantle very easily. All right. In case of the modern buildings, most of them we have to demolish. Requires no long distance transportation, which I mentioned earlier. Suitable for local climate. All right. So all these points imply, yeah, we already covered this, green and sustainability. Let's move further. All right. Now, see the vernacular building systems, they are not static, they're changing. It is something, it depends on the surroundings, it depends on the context. And since these systems are based on ease of access to materials and ease of replication, okay, the replication is again a very, very important thing. Whether people can do it or not, changes in the situation leads to change in the system. All right. There are factors beyond the control of people which force them to accept the changes. Like today, climate change is one of those things, and things are changing. I mean, up in Spiti, for example, where they're building mud houses for centuries, what is going to happen in the future? Will they be able to continue building them? And generally, this evolutionary process happens over generations. All right? So I'm going to share with you some of the changes that we have observed, we have documented. So let's go to Arunachal, the transformation. I visited Arunachal in 1993 and most of the villages had thatch roof, which you see in the right side. there's a place called Zero Plateau. It's very well known in Arunachal. And that had bamboo roof like this. This is very similar to the country tiles. We have the potter-made country tiles. Same way, right? But now 2005, you see tin roof. The walls are still same, but the roofs are changed. All right, and their tin roofs have plus points. Okay, I'm not against it. Because a lot of these changes have advantages to people. So they have to be understood well. And some more cases in Arunachal, where you have houses on stilts and some phenomenal stilts. Look at the thing on the right; it's almost 1 story high. And that was in '93. In 2005, we start seeing, instead of the tin roof, and instead of wooden stilts, we see the reinforced concrete stilts. So things are moving in and things are changing for good or for bad. All right? Mizoram. Again, very similar to Arunachal. Back in '93, there was a lot of, this kind of thing. 2010, from thatch over bamboo, we moved to tin over bamboo. And bamboo mat, instead of bamboo mat walls, you have bison panel walls. Bison panels? This is, they've been around for a long time. Instead of the cement sheets, you have these sheets which are, they're different from cement sheets. Okay, there's cement in it. And they're good for certain things. But this, what you're seeing on the right side, is very, very common sight in Mizoram today. All right. Some more transformation that we have seen, which was not seen back in 1993, are brick masonry buildings. Never seen. This is again, import from outside, and then of course reinforced concrete slabs and concrete columns and things like that. Now, there's a very interesting Mizoram modern vernacular. In 1993, you see a typical primitive kitchen. In 2010, this is a modern house, again made of bison panel, tin. There's also tin here. It's on wooden stilts. There's wooden framing inside, all right? And you see the interior. Modern kitchen and all that, all right? So it could be like any other modern house anywhere else. All right, transformation in Kashmir. There's flat earth and timber roof. Because in the interior of Kashmir, it doesn't rain much. Okay. And even today, you go in interior, you will find these kind of houses. But then slowly they have shifted. We saw this transformation happening where in one village, number of houses right on top of the mud roof, they put tin. They just placed it. All right. That's the beginning of transformation. Maybe in a year or so, they will remove the mud. So then later on, you basically got two-sided, doubly pitched tin roof houses. And then people wanted to become more fancy. So you started getting something like this. Right? So, and then the local carpenters are really fantastic and they can do these things. But these changes have taken place over a few decades. It's gradual, most of these changes. All right. Some more example here, where this is wood shingles. This is Devdar wood. There's, like wooden tiles. Okay, it's fantastic. This will last for more than 100 years. Okay, this is a very old house. And then you have slates. Very few parts of Kashmir has slate roof. And that is now transferred to, transformed into tin roof. Okay, so this again has happened over several decades. All right. Now, Kashmir 2005, there was an earthquake. Before that, you had stone masonry houses. And then, as part of the earthquake rehabilitation, some people brought these kind of tin houses. Imagine how cold it is and how difficult it will live in that. But mentally, you are safe because, tin is light, flexible, nothing will happen. All right. Somewhere, they started building these concrete walls. There's some timber, some concrete, somewhere they'll put some steel. Things are happening at random, but happening very fast because there is money coming in, government aid is coming in, and people are afraid of stone. So in case of disaster, these kind of changes happen very, very fast. And something very, very idiotic like this, also is coming in, where you see brick pillars and you see some concrete pillars here, but no beams and some, anyway, I'll not go into details of that, but some very, very illogical things happen, but people find it logical. All right. So the external influence of new technologies like brick masonry, cement mortar, CGI, RCC, all these things have entered the scene in Kashmir after 2005. Whereas before that, and this is a fast change. Latur, before 1993, before the earthquake, we had stone houses, we talked about it. 100%, absolutely 100% houses were made of stone and heavy mud roof on timber. And it had the introverted plan, where you don't open up outside, you're inside. So anyway, these were really fantastic, for the weather. But then came earthquake and a lot of things changed. So that was in 93. In 2019, in our recent visit, we saw houses made of brick and cement with reinforced concrete or somewhere tin roof, bricks coming in a big way. Bricks were nowhere on the scene before 1993. Not even concrete blocks, it was all stone. So those are tin sheds. People can't afford something, so they just bring some tin shed and they made extension to the house. All right. So the designs have radically changed, the architectural part and also the construction system. And there's a breakdown in the delivery system of the traditional system. Like people who used to break the stone and shape the stone, they're gone because there is no demand. Okay. So if someone wants to make a stone house now, it'll be extremely difficult. And of course, new materials are coming, new skills are coming. And just in a mere gap of 25 years, this is happening. And people are not happy. Okay. People do still remember those houses where they were very, very comfortable. All right. Sikkim earthquake in 2011. Before the earthquake, this was very common. The Assam style houses with ikra, timber ikra wall, and the on stone pedestal. And then we started getting this reinforced concrete pedestals. But this is before the earthquake. Over the very long time, these changes had taken place. And people started using brick masonry in the bottom part, maybe because it lasted longer or whatever. I don't know the reason, but that could be the logical. But this was a gradual change. But after the earthquake, the traditional house, all of a sudden, because the government was aggressively pushing for RCC houses, okay, and this is what started to come in. All right, so vernacular getting replaced by modern in India. What we were talking earlier, and why this is happening. So, based on what I've said, make some guesses why it is changing. So, let's see. Establishment has switched over to modern building system. See, when you have engineers knowing only about cement, concrete, and steel, obviously they're part of the system. They're part of the government engineering system. That is what they propose. All right. I remember up in Arunachal, on the way to Tawang, there's this 13,000, 14,000 root pass. There's absolutely nothing there. And far away from the pass, I see a brick house. So there was a little tea shop there. I said, what is that? He said, Sarkari Makan hai. No individual would be able to afford, because this is far from the plains where the bricks are made. So this is, it says in the most remote local location. Yeah, all right. Aggressive, misguided advertising by material manufacturers. They are shaping people's aspirations, right? They are being constantly bombarded. Hoardings, TV, newspaper, magazines, everywhere. Nowhere does anywhere any cement manufacturer says about what precautions should be taken, how to use cement. Don't see anywhere, ever. Okay, at least in cigarette thing, because they're forced to, somewhere hopefully the government will wake up to make cement people also do that. Hurdles in accessing the local materials, causing a lot of hardship to people. All right, like you were talking about timber yesterday. So there are places where timber is difficult to find because of certain laws. All right. So then people are forced to change over. No advancement to tackle the age or limitations and constraints of vernacular system. See, everything has some positive side and negative side. All right, like this remote has some positive sides, and so I mean, I should learn how to use it, but maybe there could be an easier one. So, anyway, so the whole issue is that all traditional systems do have some limitation, and in today's context, can we help to remove that? All right. Rules compel shifting away from the traditional systems. So there are also rules, especially in the government programs, which do that. PMAY is one of them. Gives poor social status to those living in these houses. Professor Prakash talked about that yesterday, right? So people, they will borrow money. They will, get into all kind of debt to make a small pakka room. Okay, they will have quote unquote kacha house, and next to that there'll be a pakka house. All right. Outcome of the recent transformation. I mean, what are the most likely impacts? More expensive technologies becoming the mainstay of common building system. Affordability now is becoming an issue. Local employment opportunities are reducing because we are buying cement, you are buying steel, you are buying even bricks where the bricks are not being manufactured. Your money is going away, someone else is benefiting. Carbon footprint of building construction is increasing. People losing control over their technologies. All right. Distant events, they change the access to the material that you had easy access to. Somebody makes a law. Typically we used to talk about Uttar Pradesh, like Uttarakhand was also part of Uttar Pradesh. Lucknow is the capital, far away from the mountain. And somebody in Lucknow makes a law that affects someone so far away. Irritants and limitations of modern technologies are being accepted and underplayed. All right. This is, we were living in a village, we had a pakka house. And in monsoon, I had to find a place which was dry to put my books and papers. We're dripping everywhere. But people accepted, barish aayega to girega. But for that same reason, people will shift over from the traditional technology to the new technology. But this is accepted. Right? It is on the plate. Also, the vulnerability and shortened life imparted by wrong use of modern technology is not even acknowledged. All right. When, again, coming back to reinforced concrete, it's a great technology, but it's something which has to be executed in exactly the way the code says. Okay. The proportions, the sand gradation, the aggregate gradation, water cement ratio, compaction, and so on and so forth. How many people can do that? I've seen even in Ahmedabad, big people. Our government talks a lot about Ahmedabad and all that, but you see horrible construction happening because a lot of places things are not even available. Okay, so this is something that that needs to be acknowledged at least by the engineering establishment that there is a problem. As a result of this shift, we are gradually replacing affordable, sustainable building technologies by unaffordable and unsustainable ones. Right? So we were talking, I think, in the beginning, whether concrete or this, it all depends where you are, and for what you are building. So each has its, pluses and minuses, and they have to be weighed in. Need of the hour: take traditional building systems forward. Number one, tackle the age-old irritants and limitations through research and transfer. Who can do that? You guys can do that. Ensure better performance through synthesis with modern technologies. Right? Modern technologies, modern materials have a role to play. The traditional systems, you can make a synthesis and things can improve a great deal. Rebuild people's confidence. Because see, what's also happened that over the years, people have started losing their confidence. And of course, you are being bombarded by advertising and all that. But main thing is losing of confidence. So what is important is to take care of these problems and rebuild people's confidence. So you bring back respectability to the vernacular options. You don't feel that, I'm in a mud hut. All right. So and engineers have a role to play there, right? Where are we? think sustainability, think green, promote improved vernacular. Improved vernacular. That is vernacular, we make some improvements, and that'll work better. All right. That's my one presentation is over.